If you can't be in the field chasing gun dogs, the next best thing is talking about it.
Join Wade and Thomas as we discover the people, the places, and the birds, and of course, the gun dogs that make upland hunting our passion.
This is the Setter Tales Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 43 of the Setter Tales Podcast with Wade and Thomas. And we've got a real interesting guest tonight, and we'll get to him in a minute. But it's been interesting in Iowa the last couple of weeks, and I think maybe we're going to have some puppies here pretty soon.
Yes, we just had our ultrasound on Friday, and we could for sure see 3 pressed up against the glass, but she's getting pretty wide, so
Very
we're
cool.
getting excited and finally getting her slowed down where a guy would like to actually go hunting with her. She's getting fat enough, so
That'll be fun stuff. And
Yeah,
so let's see, doing the math, the puppies would be whelped in August sometime?
probably we're thinking end of July, beginning of August.
Okay.
So
You're going to
we're-
be a busy man.
we're gonna be busy.
No, puppies are always fun. It's been a while since we've had some, but lots of work, but well worth it.
If you miss
well
it,
worth
I'll
it.
bring them down here, and you can.
Well, I kind of like to. Yeah, you ought to bring one. Maybe we'll have one of the pups here on the studio here one of these days when they get a little older.
Yeah.
And unless they're all spoken for, they may
No,
all be
we,
gone. But I think you're going to hang on to a one or two, aren't
I'm
you?
probably gonna hang on to more than I should, but that's just how
That's
it
the
is.
biggest
So
challenge.
It's really exciting. This will be my first setter litter, so fingers crossed everything keeps continuing to progress like it is.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had some labs and some coon dogs in the past, and you know, and this is where we're really excited about this. So I got my parents involved, and they like having them at their place, and while I'm at work they can watch them and make sure everybody's healthy, and yeah, we're
They
excited.
did a
We're
great
hoping,
job with that last one, that last pup. I said they did a great job with that last pup for you. So
yeah, I don't think they're going to raise all of them in the house.
Oh, come
I
on.
think I'm pretty well
Come
gonna
on, Dad.
pretty well be
Come on.
convinced that
No, great news.
one is enough, and 3 would be too many.
That's always fun stuff. And some more setters that always can't get enough of that. So congratulations, and we'll let everybody know as we go forward how that's going for you. Obviously, it's hot right now. The training is kind of hit and miss. Last day or two has been kind of nice and cool. And if you get a chance, get out and try to do some at least some short drills with your dogs, because they're probably like mine. They're pretty anxious to get outside and do something. But
Yeah, it
I'm lucky. I got a half-acre fence, so
Yeah, that's
I kind of turn
same
them out
here,
and they
it-
do their thing. But
72 degrees yesterday, and I let everybody out, and usually the old dog will run around for about 10 minutes and get tired of the young dogs lapping her. But they were out. Oh, I had them out for about an hour and a half last night, and there weren't as many dips in the pool as there usually is. So they were happy to be out, and it's not so hot. And
yeah, tremendous.
the pigeons are finally learning homing area at home, so they would loop around them.
Just
and-
in time.
yeah,
Just in time for those pups. That'd be
yeah,
great.
so we're excited. So.
Yeah, and so keep like I said, for the podcast purposes, go and subscribe and send us questions that we can answer for you if you have those. Tonight, obviously, we're live, and we've got a interesting guest tonight. We've been speaking with him a little bit here before the show, and I think everybody's going to really love it. And talking about training dogs, it sounds like it's got to be so simple and so easy. And there is a lot of materials and a lot of resources out there, but our guest tonight found a unique way to try to help others out that were going through what he was going through, trying to train up some gun dogs on his own. And so he's got a podcast now and does a lot of some video stuff. And Nick Adair, he's the host of Gun Dog It Yourself podcast. I know he's got some other YouTube videos. Nick, welcome to the show tonight.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
You're down there in Middle Tennessee, I guess is the best way to call it.
Yes, sir.
I think you're our first guest we've had on from Tennessee. Put a
Yeah,
pin in the
yeah. Put a
map,
pin in the map.
and
It's
and that's
not,
pretty cool.
yeah.
We were
Unfortunately,
talking.
the upland hunting here in Tennessee is probably not as
Yeah,
popular as it once was.
I think we'll talk about that a little bit because obviously Thomas has a good friend, and my oldest son are residents of Tennessee, and so yeah, it's too bad because we'd have a perfect excuse to maybe get down there and chase some birds. However, the woodcock thing is kind of that does kind of I'm kind of interested in
That
that.
kind
So
of sparks
maybe
my interest
yeah,
too.
maybe we could get down there and try something like that with you in the past, but. Just trying to get into a little bit of your background, Nick. I know you kind of started hunting as a younger person. How did that all happen? How did the bird hunting and gun dogs come into your life?
So, I grew up, I had a couple siblings. I had a brother and a sister, and we all played competitive sports year round. And so I always had a desire to hunt, but I actually didn't even get the opportunity to go hunt until later on when I was an adult and I was moved out. I went to boot camp, I did the Army Reserves, and I came back, and that's when I decided to go get hunter safety program, and then I got a coon hound, and that's really kind of what brought me into the hunting space, was chasing hounds in the woods at night. And the bird dogs didn't come till much later, until I was, probably 27, 28 or something like that. So I spent the good portion of my first, formative hunting years just chasing coon hounds, and then duck hunting with a buddy in his lab. And that's kind of just morphed into my desire to get into pointing dogs. As you guys know just as much as I do, there's just something about a pointing dog. Once you kind of see it happen, you're hooked. And not to take anything away from the coon hounds, but once I saw that first bird dog go on point, I was kind of edging that way. I knew which way I wanted to go with that.
Yeah, that's kind of a similar story on how I started as a kid too. Was going out in the woods at night with my dad with the hounds, and I competed all over the country with dogs. And but I that first setter we got, and you're like, okay, I like this. Well, then I was every night and every day that I had available, I was doing both. And now that I've gotten older and I hate being out all night coon
Yeah.
hunting, I'd just much rather follow the bird dogs. So it's kind of cool that we have similar kind of how we similar started, and I think a lot of people have done it that way too.
Yeah.
Well, what we Thomas does a lot of youth mentored hunts and that kind of thing, and we get a chance to see some first timers in the field down at the club where we do some guiding and that kind of thing. And you know that if you can get that hook set, and they see that dog do what we know our dogs are going to do, and it's a bonus if they get a chance to kill that bird over that dog and see it retrieve to hand or whatever. But yeah, if you can get that and see that and get a younger person to experience that, then hopefully they're going to be like you and we were. You'll make it a lifetime pursuit and keep the uh, gun dog hunting with gun dogs alive long after we're gone. But so that's kind of interesting. Now, at some point you had to decide, okay, what breed of dog am I gonna
Yeah.
gonna gonna take on here? And so, how did that all happen for you? And what kind of breed did you start with?
Yeah, so when you start going down the rabbit hole of bird dogs, you have one of two routes. You have the more traditional route to where people fall in love with the English setters or pointers. And then here lately, it seems like there's a lot of people just kind of fall into the versatile realm of things a little bit faster. So the German short hairs, and that's kind of where it stuck with me on my first dog. Was the German short hairs really what captured my attention and my imagination. And so I ended up going with the German short hair. And then, I did what everybody does when they get into this world and they have no idea what they're doing, and they just start calling numbers, and you're asking questions and to breeders, and you don't even know what to ask. And I came out the other side to where, you hear a lot of horror stories sometimes from people getting a bad experience finding their first bird dog. Mine was quite the opposite. I lucked out. I found a good small breeder up in West Virginia, and he actually talked me into, rather than getting a puppy, I got a 1-year-old started female. And the way he put it to me is, I know you want a puppy. You're green. You're learning a lot. I have this really great dog. She started. You can go hunt her tomorrow. And I think that she can teach you a lot more than what you can teach a young pup. And that really resonated with me. It made a lot of sense. I'm just glad that I actually took his advice, because a lot of people, when they get into it, they want the puppy. They want that experience of raising the puppy. And I try and tell everybody there are other options out there, and getting a started dog really kind of steepens your learning curve to where you're just jumping in the fire right off the bat, and you already have like a strong foundation if the breeder that you got them from did a decent enough job. And so that really kind of put me on the fast track to where, instead of me figuring out potty training and crate training and stuff like that, I got the dog and all that was done, and I was already into the fun stuff that I was really after trying to capture and learn how to do.
And that is one thing that is good when you go to a good trainer. They will push the started dog at you. It'll cost you a little more, but you see it too much where a person will go out and get a puppy, and they'll go all through all this stuff, and then by the time it's time to really get out in the field and do all the things, relearn the obedience in the field and relearn them birds, it's like they get burned out pretty quick. And then hear that dog's 2-3 years old and they're still fighting it. And it's not a bad option just to go get a dog that's at least through obedience and started, maybe seen a couple birds. I know there are a couple trainers around here that'll actually sell a puppy, and then if you're close, they'll work with you on getting that puppy up, and they don't charge a ton of money. But if you can, I think a lot of that goes to how dedicated you're going to be. If you got a busy life, you got kids, you got a job that keeps you going constantly, and I think that's where a lot of the you look at shelters and rescue leagues, and even the English Setter Rescue League is full of dogs. All of them, they're just, well, maybe I don't want a hunting dog anymore, and I think that's a good option.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. A lot of people, they'll get the puppy, and there is something to be said. There are pros to getting a puppy too, especially if you're brand new. You're learning with the puppy, and you're kind of learning at the same pace. So there's pros to that as well. But I think a lot of people, they'll get the puppy, and a lot of the puppy stuff, maybe they get frustrated or lose patience, or maybe because they don't know any better, they're trying, but maybe they put the wrong foundation on the dog, or not as solid, and then they're so anxious to get to the fun stuff, the bird dog stuff, what we get these bird dogs for, that they'll skip a lot of steps. And it's not until they're a year and a half, 2 years in, sometimes with these dogs, to where then it's not too late, but they're starting to recognize, man, I have to backtrack. I have to go back and really put this, quote unquote, steering wheel on the dog, or just some sort of foundation to get into the stuff that they really care about. And so I urge everybody, when you're starting out, don't think that a puppy is your only way, but also, the started dog isn't right for everybody as well. You have to take everything into context, and your relationship with the breeder first and foremost is going to help you, whether it's a puppy or a started dog. I know with me, I got a started dog and I still had to ask questions, but I had that resource where I could call him and he could explain to me what he did and where to go from there. So that really helped me out a lot, to where that relationship with a breeder, it really is, some people call it a marriage almost, between breeder and puppy buyers. And that's what you want with your relationship with your breeder, if you can kind of cultivate that.
Yeah, and you see the social media ads, and even back in the day as a kid, in the newspaper ads, and puppies, and they're AKC registered and whatever they are, and they're like, okay, let's go buy them. This is gonna be the ultimate hunting dog, and they come to find out it's not. And so we urge you to go to the breeders that really have a good mindset on what they're gonna do. When you call a breeder, it's like, okay, tell me what the traits of the parents are. If they can't tell you that, you're probably gonna want to keep moving, and even my breeding was so calculated in what I was going to do and what traits I was looking for. I mean, somebody calls me tomorrow and say, hey, I want one of them pups. What can I expect? I know what each parent's going to be like, and what they should pass down, even up to their size and color, to there's always different colors in there, but what traits are coming with it, and that's one thing when you're buying puppies,
Yeah.
you have to really look into. And I see it a lot with the Labrador community mainly is, they're registered, and the dad hunts, but the mom's kind of a couch potato. She'll go along, but
Yeah.
when you see, you probably deal with a lot of people and talk to a lot of people, but I'd say the biggest thing when people get dogs and try and start them themselves, I think the two main things that are forgotten about is a good recall and probably introducing them to the gun. I think the gun shyness is a plague that's happens a lot. Do you kind of see that?
Well, I think
Yeah.
that probably gets to Nick's point that sometimes you want to get to the fun stuff and you go a little too soon to the fun stuff, and and that's being in the field and shooting a gun, and too often the dog's not ready for that, and so but at least that's been my experience. I see that happen quite a bit, unfortunately. So
Yeah, I mean, both of you guys nailed it. Ultimately, is from I do get the privilege of talking to listeners on a weekly basis, and each one's a little different. And when you're talking to first time puppy buyers, whether they've already got the dog or not, it kind of comes down to the fact that they don't even know the questions to ask. They know that they're supposed to be asking questions to the breeder, but they don't even know what questions that is, because people have to realize that if they're new to this, they may have never been hunting. So they don't even know the hunting characteristic questions to ask. They don't know what range is. They don't know what we care about in hunting dogs. And a lot of us, even in this world that have been in it for 5 or 10 years, haven't even found the exact hunting style dog that they really ultimately prefer. And then when you get a puppy, gun shyness, it does seem to pop up, but kind of to Wade's point is it stems from people rushing it. They want to get to the fun stuff. They get a gun dog and it's just like, oh, my dog's supposed to be fine over guns. And then where do they go? They go to, Facebook, which, social media has its pros and cons, but there's a lot of bad information to wade through, especially if you don't really know what you're looking for in Facebook. And it only takes one misguided, well-intentioned post or comment from somebody telling them to go bang pots and pans over the dog when they're eating, or take them to a skeet range, and then you just steered that brand new dog owner and puppy down a potentially dangerous path to where you can develop a really bad trait within that dog or characteristic in that dog that you can fix it. But if you can just be patient and go about it the right way, you can avoid that altogether. And then you're not coming out of the gate with a gun shy dog, because gun shyness, it's fixable. But man, you want to talk about going at a snail pace. It's some of the most boring training you're ever going to do to try and fix that problem.
Yeah. And most some people will introduce the gun and a lot of noises before they have a good recall. And that usually helps. I don't introduce the gun until I know I have a recall or a really long check cord, because you just never know. You get them in that situation, and then if you can't get them back, they're just it reinforces it that they can just run away from their issue.
Right, you're dealing with a puppy. I mean, we all know, like 2 to 4, maybe 5 months, that puppy's not leaving your side. Like it's not even adventuresome enough to really show that it's gonna go off to where you can't recall it. Around that 6 month, they start getting a little braver, and then that's when the recall comes in. I had a buddy who got his first dog a year or two ago, and he was like, "Man, my dog has a great recall," and it was like 3 or 4 months old. I'm like, "That's great," but that's what I call puppy recall. Wait till it gets to teenager recall, because it's going to get a little braver. It's going to start testing the waters. That's when recall comes in. And while it's trying to figure out and explore the world, and it's starting to test the boundaries with you a little bit and what they can get away with, all of a sudden, if you throw in a stimulus or even a distraction in a lot of ways, such as birds and gunfire, and you don't have that recall solidified, you may have just sent that dog on a bird chase that you're not getting that dog back for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it.
We've all seen it, probably.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Luckily, it wasn't my dog,
Yeah.
but we drove to town not knowing where a dog was, and it was behind the dog box in the topper.
Yeah, I've been there, done
Oh
that.
God.
We're like, well, let's just see. Maybe she'll come back.
Yeah, that was all.
Rode with us all the way to town.
Yeah, that's kind of before the GPS stuff. You
Yeah.
know, and we kind of take that for granted in the old days. But I know, Nick, along the way, obviously, when you had your dog and you kind of get immersed in the training stuff, at some point you kind of saw this need, and which brings us to the podcast that you do now. And can you kind of tell us how that all unfolded and what the genesis was of you to start to try to help your fellow upland person out there, your gun dog person, how that all came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of what you described. I got my first dog, and I did what everybody does on their first dog. I screwed up a lot. I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't even know kind of where to go to find the information. And that was the most troubling part. Is I'm reading all these books, I'm watching videos, I'm listening to some podcasts. There were some out there that they were great in their own way, but it wasn't feeding me the information I was actually looking for on how to actually train my dog, at least not on a week by week basis. And so me and a couple buddies who were in the same shoes as me, we were all just craving the knowledge. We were craving information on how to actually train our dogs ourselves. And at the time, I lived in a subdivision. My buddies lived in a subdivision. So, like, what little information we were getting from people is it all stemmed around from, have 100 acres, have a pigeon coop, have this, have that. And it wasn't even an option for us in that regard. And so my buddies kind of came up to me with this idea for a podcast, and I was really reluctant. I was really hesitant to do a podcast. I didn't really feel like the world needed another podcast at the moment. And then fast forward, 4 years now, and it's like there's podcasts everywhere. But at the time, I was really reluctant. But I just they kept at me, and I was just kind of shunning them away. I'm like, I'm not interested in doing a podcast. I don't know anything. What am I going to talk about? What do I have to offer? And then, I was reading a book. I just finished a training book. I can't remember which one it was. I wish it did, but I picked up another training book. And within the first chapter of that second book, it completely contradicted everything that I just read in the previous book, of which that was making sense. And now I'm back to being confused. It's like I have no idea what to do again. And so it's like I closed the book, called my buddies. I'm like, all right, let's do it. Let's start finding guests. Let's start finding topics that is actually applicable to what we want to learn. And if we want to learn it, and if we're interested, then I guarantee you there's other people that are interested in the same information. And that's what we did. And, we've gone through a few different versions of the podcast with a couple different co-hosts and just people kind of coming in and out. You guys know how a podcast, it's a time suck. You really have to want to do it to stay consistent, and with that comes burnout. And people kind of come and go, and they leave their own mark on the podcast. But for the past 2.5 years or so, it's just been me primarily. And next month I think it's going to be 4 years that we've been doing the podcast, and we're around 200 episodes now. So it's just, rewind 4 years ago, I never would have imagined that I'd been here doing the podcast to the level that it's at.
Yeah, we kind of did the same thing. We got our first couple episodes, and then it's like, holy crap, we're in a year now, and we're episode 43, and it's like you get some traction, and we're kind of at that summer blues where we wish we were hunting. We're talking about it, but like just keep trudging, keep
just
digging,
keep doing
going.
it. Yeah, it's a grind. I tell everybody, I've helped a number of people start podcasts, and I tell everybody I'm an open book. If I can help anybody, whether that's dog training, podcast, whatever, I'm going to help them, because I just feel like we all have access to information, but finding quality information within that access is the hard part. And so I just want to do the best that I can to provide quality information for people. And if you're going to start a podcast or whatever, it's very similar to gun dog training, to where if you're going to make the commitment and do it, go do it. It's a grind, but you have to keep doing it, or else you're just not going to see results from it.
Yeah, with the dog training, my upbringing was a little different. I was around dogs my whole life. My dad had dogs. He had friends that trained dogs, and I actually said, this is kind of what I want to do. So I went to actual school for it and
Mm,
worked with some really great trainers. And then I came home and then worked with a whole different, like you said, your contradicts everything you did before. But
right.
once you learn all that together, you can mold that and use two different styles because, you know, people don't think this way, but there's more than one way to train a dog. There might be different ways to do it, totally different personalities with every dog. It's not just the breed. Each dog has a different personality. So it's good to have guys like you and your crew that's saying, okay, I'm going through this. And Wade and I are like, well, okay, my dog did this the other day. I can't figure out how to fix it. And he may know. And then he might come to me or you or whoever. And it's good to have a good community of people that are really dedicated to make sure they got good dogs. Make sure, I always say, as long as they come back when I ask them and they don't embarrass me in front of my friends, it's good enough.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, you know, if somebody
He
were going to,
doesn't really mean that, Nick. He's pretty. He's his dogs are. Yeah, he doesn't have to worry about his dogs not coming back and his dogs embarrassing him. Yeah, so
it's
it's
happened.
well, but what's kind of interesting is you kind of end up with uh, kind of a hybrid approach in the sense that we talk about a training technique, and maybe I do it a little bit different, but it's kind of the same. But this is the way it really works for me, and Thomas is doing it pretty much similar, but kind of a different way. And so sometimes we take that and you kind of like have the best of both worlds. Well, I've never really tried it that way, but I will this time. And I'm looking for that. I got the result I'm looking for, and so I think that's what's unique about your podcast is you kind of offer that up as, hey, there's lots of information out there. Just don't take it for granted that this is the only way to do whatever it is. There's just and the breeds are different, as you know. I mean, he Thomas has had a lot of experience with labs in the past, and then you get into the setter breed, and you go, they're really a soft dog, and you just handle them a lot different than you do a German short hair or a lab. There's just and so guys, that are training know that, and so it's going to take me longer to accomplish what I want with my setter, probably because it's going to take me longer because that dog's going to shut down on me a little bit, or I know where that line is, and so I think that's really kind of the great thing about your podcast is bringing people on with different perspectives.
Well, I appreciate that because I take that as a compliment. That was one of my main focuses when we started this off. Is I didn't want it to be a one approach podcast. Not that there's anything wrong, and it's highly advisable a lot of the time for people specifically just starting out to pick a method, pick a process, and kind of go through it and figure out what makes sense to you and what doesn't. But when we started the podcast, I didn't want it to be cookie cutter. I didn't want it to be one approach. And the way I've kind of developed or been able to describe it over the years is I tell everybody is like, stop worrying about the how, worry about the why. If you worry about the why and you really hone in on, well, why is a trainer training that? Why is it training it that way rather than how? You start to pick apart the common threads between method and trainer and trainer. And it was really interesting when we were kind of just kind of ramping up speed and the wheels were finally getting into motion. We threw a bunch of trainers for a loop in a lot of ways because one week we would have a certain trainer on talking about a way to train anything, and then the next week have somebody that directly contradicts that. But I tell everybody, find the common threads, because when you find the things that those trainers do in common, the how takes care of itself. If you understand why, the how just naturally comes. And that's why, I started doing these. I like doing series. I'll pick a topic and I'll really drill down a series. And I've done a few of them in like force fetch. The force fetch series I've done really comes to mind, to where I took force fetch, which is an overall program, and then I broke it down individual steps. And then I had 6 or 7 different trainers come on each week and break down each little step differently. And it really threw them for a loop, because one guy in particular, he was like, well, I don't know what the guy before me said. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Just come on and talk about your insight, your experience, your methods. And it's really resonated with the listeners to where it's okay if you don't know the exact roadmap that you're wanting to go on. But I like to think, or at least I hope, that the principles of dog training are starting to sink in with my listeners, because at the end of the day, every method and how is different, but dog training is still dog training. The principles don't change based on who's holding the check cord or the e-collar. Dogs still learn the same way that they're going to learn. And then, each dog is different within of itself. There's as many differences within a breed as there are amongst the breeds. And that's why I've never really had an issue coming up with topics or guests to talk about, because I am naturally that curious. I want to know this information. And so I seek that information out, and I don't just get honed in on one way of doing things. And it seems to be resonating with a lot of people.
So did you find that the 6 trainers all did it a little different?
A
The
little
first,
bit, but
yeah.
it's amazing how many, every time I've done a series, the trainers involved in the series naturally circle back and kind of give me feedback on it. And it's amazing how many times they say more often, well, I do that almost exactly the same with them, except this small little difference. And to me, that's the biggest tell, is they all train the exact same way, or the principles at least. And then they just change, just put a little bit of difference in their flavor. That's all it is. Just a little twerk here. Maybe they, instead of ear pinch on force fetch, maybe they do toe hitch, just little minor things. But either way, it's still the same principles.
They're all going towards the same goal, and I've seen it all, multiple ways. And with, the big lab trainers, some of them do it with an e-collar, and they do it lightly. And it's a fast track, because you could really go backwards on a force fetch. And the one guy, he goes, well, how would you force fetch? Well, we can do the toe pinch or the ear pinch. He says, you going to swim out in the middle of that pond and pinch that dog's ear? And I said, no, not particularly, especially if I'm duck. He goes, if it's 35 degrees out and you're on the marsh and there's ice around the edges, you going to swim out there and pinch that dog's ear? Well, no. He says, well, this is how we do it. They still go through the same method. They still you're right. They're all different. And if you can pinpoint a certain way of how all these guys are doing it and mix it together, I mean, if you're training multiple dogs, you might have a whole litter of puppies. And I've done it where I force fetched a whole litter for this trainer I worked for. And every one of them, I had the same methods, but every one of them I had to just tweak that knob a little different. And one might be good at sitting and holding, the other one might not want to sit when he holds, so you gotta, so yeah, you're doing the right thing, for sure, is getting multiple opinions, and people can make their own style, because I've been with tons of different trainers. Everybody's got a different style.
That's kind of what they say, right? If every dog was exactly the same, it'd be easy, right?
Yeah.
Training would be easy, but they're not. And so every dog, the first thing you have to do is to plug into that personality or how they learn, or, some of them just take longer. Some of them fight you. Some of them don't. Some of them want to please you. I mean, that, to me, that is the cool part of it, is kind of figuring out, okay, what's the story on this dog, And, and so, and the people that are good trainers, obviously, it doesn't take them very long to figure that, what the challenge is going to be with a certain dog. And so it's kind of like the recipe is a little same, but at the end, it all looks like a cake, right? So, I mean, but it's kind of how I heard a guy put it one time. And so, but what kind of generally, what do you think, what are most people looking for, or what's the biggest questions, the most common question you get for people that are trying to train a dog and they don't know what to do, and they ask you, what do I do? What is that kind of number one, I guess, that comes out of your podcasting that you do?
I think a lot of people, and this is not going to be the most fancy or sexy answer, to be perfectly honest, but I think it goes back to what we kind of already touched on, to where people overlook the foundation. They overlook the obedience. They overlook the fact that what your dog is showing inside the house or inside the kennel with how you're getting them in and out of the crate, all of that shows up in the field. And so if you want that good working relationship with the dog in the field, it doesn't start in the field. You can't go teach that in the field. It starts in your day-to-day consistency with around family, inside the house, around other dogs. All that stuff matters, and that's not the fun stuff. That's not what people want to hear. They want to get these gun dogs and they want to go plant birds and they want to go shoot birds, and I get it. I want to do that too, even with my own dogs. But you know what? Sometimes just taking a dog out and doing a heel session in the backyard, or just putting them on whoa, or putting them on a place board, and just make them sit there and concentrate and focus and get them used to it's okay to sit still. It's okay to stand there and do nothing and just focus on the task. To me, when people reach out, so often they're asking questions that they don't even understand what the problem necessarily is indicative of. It's like, let's stick with retrieving. They're like, oh, my dog will go pick it up, but it just won't bring it back to hand. I keep hitting it with the collar and blah 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 blah, and they keep talking about it in terms of a retrieving problem, but it's actually a recall problem. And it's like, once you tell them that, oh wow, it makes sense to them. But to your point earlier, I can't remember which one of you guys said it, sometimes you just need that other person to bounce an idea off of. And dog training is not rocket science. It's really not. It's simple, but it ain't easy. I got that from Rick Smith, to where, when you talk about dog training, the concepts and understanding dogs and how to train it, it's simple when you just think about it. It's simple when you're listening to a podcast or reading a book, but it's not easy to go apply it. And that's where the experience in going out with your dogs really shines and shows up, to where most people, if you just concentrate on the relationship with your dog in the home or the kennel, and really create that working relationship to where that dog respects you. I know a lot of people want to talk about dogs loving them or liking them. I don't really buy into that with dogs as much as I buy into they need to respect me. And that's kind of how we get this working relationship. I respect them, they respect me, and then we're working together. And that's the way I look at it in terms of my dogs, is to where I focus on having a nice, quiet dog inside the house and off switch. Now, my dogs aren't perfect. If somebody knocks on the door, they're going to be dogs. They're going to go bark. But I'm not going to let them bark their heads off. I'm going to go up to them and I'm either going to correct it, I'm going to redirect them and go put them on a place board, send them in the kennel, get them away from letting them just follow their urges. Some of these dogs, they're not even, a lot of people claim these dogs have gotten softer over the years. I would say that people have gotten softer, and they allow these dogs a lot more room to maneuver that they shouldn't be afforded inside the house, in my opinion. And some people can disagree with that, but you go to somebody's house to where the dogs run the house, you know right away what kind of cluster you're going to see in that field with that dog. You go to somebody's house to where that dog is calm, cool, collected, not afraid, not timid, but just calm and confident. You know what kind of dog you're going to get out in that field. And there's a fine line there. You can create a robot, and that's kind of going one way, too far one way. I'm looking for that relationship, that camaraderie. We're working together, and the dog's going to mess up. It's going to be a dog. And there's something to be said for that. I just interviewed Mo Lindley, and he says it all the time. It's let a dog be a dog, but to a certain extent. If they're living in my house, they're going to be a dog within my boundaries, if that makes any sense at all.
No, and a lot of people, maybe you'll disagree, but I think with training, it's 50% mental and 50% physical. You have to be in a good mental state. If you're getting frustrated and you're training your dog, that dog feeds off that. And in redirection is the best dog training tool that people aren't all aware of. Like if you're having a trouble with something hard, you're trying something new with a dog, and people sit there and beat that into the ground till the dog's frustrated, you're mad. All it takes is just a little redirection. If you're having a trouble with a dog healing and that dog's just not doing it, do something different.
Yeah.
Just switch over. Don't go backwards, but do something they know. Get that confidence back in that dog that, oh, that was easy. Okay, now let's try it again. We're not thinking about healing. We're thinking about sitting. We're thinking about sitting and then retrieving, bringing it back to sit. Now we're going to go heal. But, we can talk dog training. I mean, I can do it constantly. I have a friend that's a dog trainer, and we talk 2-3 times a week about different things. But let's hear a little bit more of the personal stuff. I guess you got with your dogs. You got obviously we do kind of favor towards Quinn, the English setter, and we kind of talked about bloodlines and we're similar in that area. But what's the differences like between your setter, who I know is pretty young yet, and you're thinking about doing some trials, and then the short hairs? I mean, obviously you're seeing a way different dog, obviously.
Yeah. So I have 3 dogs currently, and 3 different breeds. So my oldest one is a short hair. She's 9, 10, somewhere in there. I'm horrible with age, but she's around 10 years old, and she is when people talk bird dog, that's the dog. Like, I've been all over the country. I've hunted all kinds of different species, and it's like no matter what you put her on the ground to do, like she is going to go find birds, and that's what she's going to do. Then I have a small Munsterlander named Lucy. She's around 5 now, and she's a really interesting one. And she is the one that can get under my skin. She is an inconsistent dog in a lot of ways from day to day. And the best way to describe her is I have been in the field with her and hunted with her to where anybody would be like, load that dog up in my truck. I'm taking that dog home with me. Then the very next day she gets out of the kennel and you're looking at her and you're like, I don't know what you are, but I don't even want you right now. It's like, so she is very good at what she does really well, which kind of sounds weird or redundant to say, but her issue is consistency. And that's why I really hone in and try and pay attention on keeping everything I do as consistent as possible, because you take a dog like her to where she doesn't have that structure or consistency, and her inconsistency or lack of confidence is really going to even just exponentially grow even more. And so I try and keep things grounded for her. But man, you want to talk about a dog that loves to retrieve, that has a heck of a nose, that's her. Not so much on the pointing instinct. It's like Munsties, for better or worse, and it depends on the line. Every litter is different. Every breeder is different, and all the characteristics are different. Some Munsties have a lot of point in them. Some don't. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's bad to say the whole breed doesn't have a lot of point in them. She has a lot of point on wild birds. You go plant a pen raised bird, she couldn't care less about it. It's like her nose is solid enough to where she knows when human scent is involved. She knows when it's planted. She knows when you're playing a game, and she doesn't care. I've tested both her and Rachel, my short hair, in NAVDA utility. They both got prize 2s. They both had pretty solid days. The only thing that kept Lucy from her prize 1 was her point. And she just does this little loosey-goosey kind of point, just like, yeah, there's a bird here. I don't care. But then you go get on a wild point or a wild bird, and I have videos and pictures of her just locked up. If it's a wild bird scent with no human scent around, she'll lock up. And so she's a really interesting, I call her my little head case. I've learned more about dog training through that head case than I did with Rachel, my short hair. And then I changed over to Quinn, my setter, my little rock star puppy right now. She's going to be a year at the end of this month, but I'm really excited for her. And she has been a real breath of fresh air in a lot of ways. Obviously a lot of the challenges that I had with my Munster, with the lack of point in the training field, you don't really have that problem with the setter in the field. And she's been a lot of fun already, just early on, seeing her develop and the light bulbs going on. And man, she's just been easy. Like my wife was talking about it the other day, just inside the house, just working her way into our lifestyle. She's just been a real pleasure to work with. Uh, you know, I didn't get a setter for her retrieving instinct, but so far that's been a really interesting characteristic of hers, to where inside the house, she's just going to bring stuff to you all day long, want you to throw it. She wants to retrieve in the house. Let me do something. You cross that exterior threshold and you go outside, she couldn't care less about retrieving anything. I mean, I can do some tricks with my other dogs, make it competitive, whatever, and and she'll do one or two, but that's it. Once she crosses outside, she has one thing on her brain, and that's to go find birds. And I'm not trying to screw that up for retrieving. It's just like, that's what I want. Go find birds. I have the German dogs to go retrieve. I want her to go burn up that field and go find that bird for me.
Yeah, and I have had that in the house multiple times. Is I can throw stuff. CJ, who's gonna have puppies here, when she was little, I could throw all day in the house, and they're just wanting to do something besides chill out and go outside. And you might throw the ball or whatever she's whatever she's wanting in the house. She might go get it once or twice. No, but she did figure out in the field, okay, I want this. He wants that bird. So she's, taught herself, okay, now she's a bomb retriever, and same thing with my little pup. She don't want anything to do with it in the house, but she'll actually go out and retrieve in the wild. So I got two opposites, and then a male that doesn't really care, and my young male, he's learning. He just needs to be singled out, and just me and him shooting birds onto him, and then just, pretty much like, hey, Dad, look what I got. And, Wade did teach me a trick this summer. I haven't tried it yet, but, you shoot the bird down, the dog's there. Just walk away like, oh.
Yep. I was going to say walk away. Yeah.
Walk away, and he got it fixed. So that is going to be a trick I'm going to do with my male gunner, is just turn around and go the other way.
Yeah.
And he'll either bring it or he'll eat it. Now, if he's eating it, he's gonna get it. But
yeah,
as long as he's there, I can go get it. That's what my legs are for, But I want him out burning the brush, finding birds.
Yeah.
And usually we're hunting pheasants, so if the dog can eat a pheasant, then that's pretty impressive.
He's usually got him half skunned,
But no, I've seen that. I've had several people in the field that have complained about, their dog won't retrieve, and I mean the dog marked well, and goes to the bird, but just doesn't pick it up, and that's kind of like, well, let's just turn and walk back up the hill. And he was like, well, what are we doing that for? And pretty soon here comes the dog right by us, and it's got that bird, and I talked to that guy later, and he said, that dog has retrieved ever since. Well, but it's just that one little thing that happens, and so
the light bulb goes off.
It may not happen. It may not work every time, but I'd say with the majority of dogs, it's something to try at least. And
it's not even retrieving. That works for recall too. You get that dog that comes in and 10, 15 yards, pops and just looks at you like, you can't reach me. Come get me. Just turn around and walk away. It's amazing how quick they come into you. And I love seeing people's faces the first time they see that trick work. They're like, huh, that's really interesting. And, Quinn, she retrieves when I shoot birds for her, which isn't very often. I think a lot of people overuse birds in the training field. I do. I mean, I know that there's something to birds make a bird dog, but I wish that people would start phrasing it as quality birds make a bird dog. If you don't have quality flying birds or shooters, don't use them. You can train so much, especially when you're talking about setters on average, when they have a lot of bird drive and pointing instinct. They don't need you to shoot the bird. You can teach so much more stuff with flyaways and pigeons that you don't have to shoot them. But on the few that I have shot, she has brought him back. Now, it's not the cleanest handoff or cleanest retrieve, but I don't care. I know it's in there. I'm going to come to that after hunting season. But I think if we can circle back, you guys asked, what's the most common question that I get from listeners? One that didn't really pop into my head is, my dog is 5 months old and it doesn't care about retrieving, or it won't hand off completely. I wish, and this goes for German dogs, English setters, it doesn't matter, people would put it back into perspective that first, dogs have to find birds before a retrieve even matters. Go find the bird, go shoot the bird, and then worry about a retrieve. So many people get these dogs and they just go in the backyard and they just throw their arms off doing retrieve after retrieve after retrieve. And then they go hunting and they wonder why the dog isn't ranging more than 15 yards from them. And it's like, because you didn't cultivate that field search. All you did was retrieving, and you worked on the end result before you worked on go before whoa. Get that dog excited to go, find stuff, get them curious, get them following their nose, get them quartering in the field. All that stuff to me matters exponentially more than retrieving, especially in the first season. Now, that doesn't mean don't try and cultivate it if you can. Like, if there's a natural instinct, kind of shape it a little bit. Don't just let it go dormant and to try and bring out later. But if your dog doesn't show retrieve in the first season, it's not the end of it. I mean, we got a bird dog to go find birds. If you wanted a retriever, then there's a thing called a lab to where their last name is Retriever.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first, I always say before we get to our next kind of thing, but when I tell people, get the dog listening, have a good recall, make sure the obedience is there. If the breeding's, if the instinct's there, they're going to figure all that stuff out.
Right.
There's dogs you've never been hunting and they have the really good obedience. You just get them in the right situation, and like you said, that light bulb goes off, and then everything doesn't matter anymore. They're wanting to be a bird dog, and it's just people get rushed too much. 5 months old, my puppy's not retrieving. Hey, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
But before every show, we end a show. We like hearing your favorite dog story. Now, I see you got some grouse back there. You got some woodcocks. You some pheasants. What is your favorite dog story?
The favorite one, I kind of have a different one for each dog. I think I think a lot of people kind of fall in that camp, to where first and foremost, me and hunting, without the dogs, without my dogs, I'm not going to say I don't have any interest, but like, the dog is a very important factor in the equation or formula for me. Now, I get just as much enjoyment of a buddy's dog out there with me. As long as I have a relationship with the dog, I enjoy it. So, like, the dog work matters to me. Like, I don't get the same enjoyment out of just going and shooting wild flush birds, even if my dog just happens to be on the ground. I really want to see that natural occurrence between dog and bird transpire between me. I don't like injecting myself into that any more than is absolutely necessary. And so what's funny to me is, like, with Rachel, I've got a few good stories. I have one successful story, but I'm going to start off with the first thing that always pops up into my head when I start, going back in the memory bank and trying to remember the stories that really matter the most to me. And with her, it was, again, she was started. We were figuring each other out. We go hunting. We do a trip up into Wisconsin, and I'm still learning her. She's still learning me. I mean, I'd had her for a few months, but, getting to know a dog inside the house and training field is different than getting to know a dog in the actual North Woods chasing grouse. And I don't know what I'm doing at all. Like, I am green as anything. This is my first grouse hunt, really. And I go out there, and she just pins a bird, and she nails it. And to this day, I don't think I've ever gotten another bird to flush with such a give me shot. I could have hit it with a broom. Like, it was wide open, beautiful shot. And I froze. Like, I didn't even pull the trigger. I don't even think if I can remember correctly, I don't even think I got the shotgun to my shoulder, because it was all so foreign to me and it all happened so fast. that like the bird just gets up in front of me, and I just see this gray phase rough grouse just gliding away from me. And I never did it. And I will never forget that look on her face when I looked down at her and she's just like, what are we doing here? Like, I did it. Where are
Rookie.
you? Yeah, rookie. What are you doing? And so it's funny how like that memory sticks in my head. But with her, we went to Arizona back in January and we hunted all the quail species down there. And the last walk we did, she just had one of those walks where she just tore it up on scale quail. And I shot a staggered triple over her. So she goes on point. Birds start flushing. I shoot to my left, get that. Shoot to my right, get that. And they both fall. And I immediately reload. And as I'm waiting on her to bring one of my birds back, it's starting to take me a minute. And I'm like, well, where is she? Next thing you know, the Garmin goes off again and she's back on point, and it's, 25, 30 yards ahead, like down a little ravine, bird gets up and I shoot that one. And then she brings all three of them back to me. And I just handed the shotgun to my buddy who was filming on that walk. And I'm like, I'm done. Like there's nothing cooler than that, to shoot three birds over my dog's point, and she gets the retrieve on all of them. It's just like, you're not topping that. I'm not out here chasing limits. I'm out here chasing that memory right there. And I'm not topping that memory right there.
Those are always the best stories. So, and you are the second person to give us a memory of a scaled quail hunt. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but Nick, we may have to have a second episode at some point in time, and
Yeah, I think we'd like to do that. I think there's just so much information that we can cover in 50 minutes, 55 minutes just doesn't seem to,
Yeah.
to get enough of it. So maybe we could have you back and we could kind of get a little more, do a little deeper dive into some of the training stuff, and that'd be awesome if we could do that.
and if you're watching or listening, make sure you give us a subscribe. Give Nick one there too, and check his stuff out.
Yeah.
And keep listening to us, and give him a listen. And if you have questions for either of us, you can send it to us. And if we get enough questions, maybe we'll just have like a question and answer thing, and bring Nick on. But we 100% appreciate you for joining us tonight. And we all learn from other people, so it's always a good thing.
Absolutely, guys. I enjoyed it. It's a blast. I'd never have a problem talking dogs and bird hunting. So you guys just let me know when you want to do it again, and we can make it happen.
That
Thanks.
sounds great.
We appreciate it. Thanks, Nick. Take care.
Well,
Well,
it's
let's
another
say,
show.
We got to subscribe. Make sure you subscribe not only to our show, but check out Nick's thing and Gundog It Yourself, his podcast. He has a Facebook page, some really neat videos. If you're interested in trying to ask some question about training dogs, let us know. Let him know. There's some good resources there. Tonight's episode, obviously, is brought to you by Kinetic Performance Dog Food and Highland Hunting in Riverside, Iowa. And with that, I'll say, take somebody hunting.
Keep their nose in the wind.